Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final session of the day, which is called Productive Partnerships. My name is Tammy Smith, and I'm a trainee journalist currently working for ITV Wales. Over the next hour, we'll be speaking to 4 esteemed panelists who will be revealing what they look for in production partners and talent, how they work with partners, and what opportunities are out there for creators who need to take their content to the next level. First, a reminder at the end of the session, some of the speakers will be gathering in Wonder for a 45-minute chat. If you're not in Wonder already, the link and password are being posted in the chat right now. Remember, put this in a Chrome browser to make it work a bit more seamlessly. We have a sponsor for the final session of ABC. Once again, Open Beijing, one of CMC's partners in China, have come forward in support as they did for our spring webinar. Open Beijing are the agency delivering Beijing's new 2 zones policy, which opens up the city to international investment. They're particularly keen to attract additional cultures, content providers, animation production studios, and related media and media services, businesses to Beijing, and there is a range of incentives for companies to get involved. So thank you so much to Open Beijing. And thanks to our panelists for giving their valuable time so freely. We have Lynn Chadwick, who is the Vice President of Content and Sales at Humana Humana Animation. Next, we will hear from Ed Galton, who is the CEO of Cake. Then Alex Wiseman, who is the Senior Vice President of Distribution and Acquisitions at 9 Story Media Group. And finally, Charlotte Lowndes, who's the Director of Animation Production at Moonbug Entertainment. If anybody watching has questions they'd like to put to our panel today, there is an opportunity to do so in the Q&A. You can post your questions throughout and we'll get to you for as many questions as we can at the end of the session. So let's get started. First, we are going to hear from Lynn at Humana Humana.
Hello, hi, thank you for inviting me and thank you, Tammy. As you said, my name is Lynn Chadwick. I'm VP of Content and Sales at Humana Humana Animation. I'm here in lovely, sunny Halifax, Nova Scotia, probably the best place on the planet in my opinion, but I'm a little bit biased. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about who we are and what we do. We are, first of all, I should probably give you a few hints on the name because it's a bit of a talking point, Humana Humana. It actually comes from the Flintstones, and it's what Fred Flintstone often utters under his breath when he's a little flummoxed. So that's where the name comes from. We are a 16-year-old studio. Originated by Adam Mimnar, who is our owner, obviously, and executive producer. He started his career as a DreamWorks animator on feature films, so he's pretty accomplished. Our studio is very accomplished at 2D and 3D production. We obviously rely on Harmony and Toon Boom and Maya and our own 4K pipeline, which I'll get to in a second. The studio is a fair size at 65 seats. We can actually ramp up to 100 or 100 plus, depending on the production requirement of the client. We have 2 studios here in Halifax, one literally equidistant, just up the road from each other. We also have a third runoff studio in Hamilton, Ontario, should we need it. If we have a big enough production where we require additional backup, we bring on that studio as well. Our artists are brilliant and they're really well cross-trained. So often they are, we have an animation that's coming up in 2D and we have a 3D animation coming off production. We can switch our artists around to whichever the production that's coming in next requires them to be on. We have a full production pipeline, which means we can run full production from pre-production, animation, all the way through to post. We do outsource our post. We don't do that in-house, but we can run the entire production. But we're also a very nimble studio. So we're able to dip in and out with, whichever our client needs, whatever the production requires. We can just do boards, animatics, and animation, or we can do the entire thing. And we love a challenge, so it's great to have that flexibility. Our talent pool is really strong here in Halifax. I'm often asked, where do you get your animators from? Aren't they only in BC and Ontario? We're very lucky. We have a very strong core team on staff, and that allows us to maintain a nice creative core of strong artists. We have seen an influx from Ontario, though, thanks to COVID, I suppose. Many people have decided it actually is a really good idea to move potentially from Toronto and come out to the East Coast. So we've benefited from that. We are able to keep our artists very busy, and there's 4 other animation studios here in Halifax. So it's really quite good because we're able to rotate our crews between the 4 production companies. Just to give you an idea of the sort of programs we have created or been in production on, from a 2D point of view, we've worked on Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which was in 2D, Toon Boom Harmony, and that was for DHX, WildBrain, and Sony. And we did Chomp Squad, which was a 2D Harmony production of 26 5-minutes for Hasbro. That was full production. And on the 3D side, we've been involved in Mike the Knight, the series, and Mike the Knight, the feature for Nelvana, Bubble Guppies for Nelvana as well. And our most recent shows were Hot Wheels City and Monster Truck Island, both short form for Mattel. And we combined our 3D Maya pipeline with our 2D, with our 4K pipeline as well. So we were able to bring all of our expertise to the table on a 3D point of view. In addition to all of that studio for hire stuff, we have our own channel, which is called Tunivision. This is a free-to-air animation channel running from early morning to evening, family and children. And we are in 40% Canadian households right now. Hopefully the end of this year will be expanded to the entirety of Canada and also into the US, we're hoping. Some of our biggest and most successful shows right now are Paw Patrol, Bat-Pat, IMK. We also have an anime hour, and we show Redekai and Tange Nights. So we have a real variety, and we encourage the family to co-view with our choice of programming. So that's been a really successful initiative. We also do have our own IP. We're not just a studio for hire. We have a show called I Am a Dinosaur, which is 52 times 2 minutes, which is a flash animation. And it's been viewed on YouTube over 200 million times. So it's pretty successful. We also have 2 new preschool shows of our own in early development, with a couple behind that. And we have a couple of adult animation shows as well, also in development. So yeah, we've got quite a lot going on right now at Humana. And I think hopefully that's enough, Temi, to give an idea of who we are and what we do.
Fantastic, that was fascinating, Lynn. So I do have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind me asking.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you. So could you tell us a bit about the tax credits that are available in Nova Scotia and how they differ from the rest of Canada?
Absolutely, that's a great question, thank you. I think it's the jewel in the crown. I think we're a little bit of a well-kept secret over here on the East Coast. We're very fortunate. We do have the best tax credits in the entirety of Canada. So we are able to put 67.5% of labour spend, or Halifax labour spend, into a budget. And that equates to approximately 45% of the Canadian spend. So, and there's so many different ways to, pardon my French, skin the cat. There are many different ways we can contribute financing. It could be an 80-20 split, 80 being Canada, 20 being the UK, a 20-80 split where perhaps a producer is nicely almost financed and is just struggling with that last 20%. We can do a 50-50, a 70-30. As I said, there are so many different ways of making that financing work. But the other advantage of, in addition to the 67.5% tax credit, we are then able to access also local funding from the likes of the Shore Rocket Fund, who are fantastic, very, very supportive. And because we're in Atlantic Canada, we're able to access a couple of digital funds as well. So the Eastlink Digital Fund is also good. Combining those additional funds with our tax credits, those funds on their own, if successful, we can add another $400,000 to $600,000 to a budget. So it's really a great incentive to consider co-producing with us or moving some of your production to us. Again, it really depends on the project, it depends on the client, and it's a great initiative to open conversations with, for sure. We can definitely be of help. In addition, our channel, Tunivision, can also act as a Canadian broadcaster and add a little bit more to the pot there as well.
Right, brilliant. Thank you so much there, Lynn. And another question for you. How do you work with the UK creatives, and what do you typically need to see from them in order to help you help them, sorry, to get their shows to green light?
Another good question. Thank you. So yes, I think it's a really great opportunity, especially for the UK with Canada, with us. Particularly, we have that great tax incentive. We have a co-production treaty in place, which of course is fantastic. The tax credits really can help get to green light for sure. We would love to talk to people at any point. Ideas at a very, very early stage is always really helpful. A finance plan would be lovely, just to give us an idea of what there is, what the plan is, how much money is going to be spent where. Of course, any kind of broadcaster or streamer commitment is really, really helpful. And then that really helps us assess what we can bring to the table and to see how we can make this work. But again, to stress, early ideas are fantastic. It's all about the creative, the idea, the storytelling, and the creative drive behind the show. If it's a great show, we'll figure out a way to get it made eventually. And as I said earlier on, projects where a producer or a creator may have a chunk of money already in hand is fabulous, because then we can manipulate our side to a degree in order to help get to fully financed. It's not an easy thing to do. It is very much like a jigsaw puzzle, but it's certainly achievable. And we would love to talk to people, to see what's out there and see how we can help.
Brilliant. And do you work with the UK post-production houses as well?
Yes, of course. It just depends on what the show needs. I mean, as I said from my preamble, we can step in and do the majority of it, pass the post back to the UK. It really depends on, on what's necessary. The luxury of having a UK treaty co-production is the creative drive, the director, the writers can go between the two parties. It's wherever the best place sits for the benefit of the show.
Brilliant. Some really valuable insight there, Lynn. Thank you so much. And next up,
you're welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Ed from Cake.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Tammy. How are you? Good to see you.
Hi there.
Thanks for having us on today. Hi, everyone out there in the virtual world. I can't see you, but I hope you are all doing very well. It's very hard to follow after Lynn went, because she did a fantastic job. I think I need to work with Humana Humana very soon. So I want to give you a little bit of background about Cake, who we are, what we do, how you can work with us in the future, see if there's any partnerships we can get involved in, down the road. Cake's been going for about 16, 17 years now. I am the CEO and principal of Cake. We are one of the leading independent entertainment companies specializing in production, distribution, development, financing, and brand development of kids and family properties. We work in both animation and live action. We have created a partnership recently called Cake Start Productions, which is a live action production business, which I'll get to later on. We have two businesses, our distribution business and our production business. Cake Distribution, which has been the driver of our business for many years. We represent over 1,600 half hours of animation and live action content. We're working with renowned producers and creators from all over the world. We work on projects from South Africa to South America, to Australia, to Europe, to Asia, North America, and so on. We work on hit properties like the Total Drama franchise, which we've sold over the years, probably close to $40 million in sales and distribution revenue alone over the past 15 years working on that brand. We work with Rovio on the Angry Birds franchise, which has done very well. But we also work on smaller projects from independent producers from all different walks of life from all over the world. And we'll continue to do so. Cake Distribution is headed up by our head of sales named Bianca Rodriguez, who has been with us for over 10 years. And she and her team have a great way of canvassing the world and going out there and finding homes for the properties that we represent. We also have Cake Productions, which is our production company. We have about 15 or so projects in development at the moment. Cake Productions is managed by Rob Doherty, our head of production, and also by Dan Bays, who is our head of development. We are working on productions at the moment, including Angry Birds Summer Madness that we're doing for Netflix. We're doing another project with Netflix and Triggerfish called Mama K's Team 4. which is a big series that we're doing out of South Africa and also in France. Angela Rules that we're working on with Teamto in France. We're on our 5th season of that. Also for French Television, Canal Plus and Super RTL. We've done Space Chickens in Space with Anima Studios out of Mexico and Disney EMEA. We've worked with Paper Owl Films on Pablo for CBeebies. And we're doing the 2nd season of Mush Mush and the Mushables with La Cabane and Thurastar, which is currently premiering both on Boomerang and HBO Max and Cartoon Network in the US. And we've just recently received an Emmy nomination for that series. So needless to say, we're always looking for, projects that, really sort of speak to the heart of strong characters, strong storytelling, and that can come from any part of the world. We're sort of agnostic in the sense that we don't have a studio ourselves, so we're not obligated to work with a particular, animation studio. But the way we work is we like to help to cultivate projects, help to develop them, help to co-produce them, and then partner great ideas with great studios so that we can execute on the animation side. On the live action front, we've recently partnered with Kickstart Productions out of Vancouver and Los Angeles, headed by Jason Netter, who was also the executive producer on shows like The Preacher and The Boys, and also brought in a guy named Corey Lunsford, who worked for Disney for 20 years, managing Disney Channel's live action business. So that's our live action side of our business. And Corey is actively working on finding us live action projects that we'll be producing moving forward together with Kickstart. That is something that we're leaning into quite heavily, and we should be making a fairly large announcement in the next couple of weeks about that, things that we're doing there. In terms of how you can work with us, we are always looking for really great projects, whether they're in the preschool space or they're in the kids, 6+ age demographic, or even in the family place, both in animation and live action. That's something that we'd be open to looking at. I would suggest we would steer projects to Daniel Bays on our team, and I can give you information on him, but he's the incoming person that will look at content as it comes in, and then we'll funnel it through our business, and it will be looked at by the sales team, by the production team, and by the development team. So it's a pretty small business still. There's about 25 of us at Cake. So we like to say we're a fairly producer-friendly business, meaning that we work closely with our producers. We make decisions, hand in hand with them, both on the production and on the distribution side. We feel that's sort of been the key point of our business, in the past, and that's the way we continue to work into the future. Always out for looking for new projects, and if you have something that you want to bring to us, feel free to do so anytime. I would say that's probably enough, Temi. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them later on, but hopefully that gave you a good indication of who we are.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ed. And congratulations on your Emmy nomination as well. That's really, really impressive. Sounds like you guys are working on a load of really captivating things. Thanks. Now I do have a couple of questions for you, if you don't mind answering them for me. Mm-hmm. So we know that kids are engaging with content in many ways now, and the traditional linear broadcasters are competing with streaming platforms, social media, gaming, TikTok, amongst others. So we want to know, has this affected the way that you look for your content yourselves? For example, we know that channels will seek out talent from YouTube and build content around them. So is there something that Cake has done or would consider doing?
Sure. I mean, I would say that, look, we're still getting content from everywhere. We're sourcing content from places like YouTube as well, and that is certainly something that we would continue to do. I wouldn't say that is our only business plan, but it's one of many places where we would source content. We managed the Angry Birds. I know Angry Birds is originally a game, but it had a very successful life on YouTube. We took managing the YouTube channel of Angry Birds and brought that content off of YouTube and put it on linear platforms and VOD platforms all over the world, and we did so very successfully. And the fact that it had a successful life on YouTube didn't really matter to the success of the series and shorts on other platforms. So in that sense, it can work. It can work that way. But ultimately, we are sourcing our content from various different places, and our business strategy, I would say, we're always cognizant of the fact that there are lots of competing platforms out there, and we have to figure out how we tailor the content that we are producing to work for those particular platforms and places where kids are consuming content.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ed. And one more question for you. How do you work with UK creators and source new content? Do you use independent creators? Do you as independent creators need to be attached to a studio, or can they pitch ideas to you directly?
Sure. I would say we are sourcing content from individual creators and from studios. The only thing I would say is, if you have an idea, you need to make sure that it's fairly well baked, that you have a sense of what your show is going to be and how you're going to get it made. We can help you sort of fill in the rest, but I think you need to know what your project is. If you have a one-liner, you probably don't want to bring it to us yet. You probably should sort of bake your idea a little bit more, because we're still a small entity. We don't have the headspace to necessarily take on projects that are in their way infancy. So something to consider, but we are certainly working with creators, individuals, and also studios.
That's great, Ed. Some really helpful insight there. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Sorry about the camera thing.
No problem at all. It happens to us all. Next up, we have Alex from 9 Story Media. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Temi, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Nice to see everybody. And thank you very much for inviting me today. So my name is Alex Wiseman, and I'm Senior Vice President of Distribution and Acquisitions at 9 Story Media Group. And I'll give you a little bit of a lowdown on the company. So we are a producer, distributor of creative-driven kids content and family content. We have offices in Toronto, New York, Dublin, and Bali. We have a staff of about 1,300 people right now. We have a catalog of about 4,200 half hours of animation, live action, and programming, which is sold in over 180 territories around the world. And over the past few years, we've made some key sort of milestone acquisitions. So in 2015, 9 Story Media Group, which is headquartered in Toronto, bought the CG animation studio Brown Bag Films in Dublin, which is where I am based here. Then in 2018, we acquired the development and consumer products leader in New York called Out of the Blue Enterprises. And we launched a standalone consumer products division, which is called 9 Story Brands. And in 2019, we acquired a studio in Indonesia, in Bali, called Base, which it has been a partner of ours for some time. And we also launched our live action division. So we basically have 4 primary divisions. We have creative affairs, we have production, we have distribution, and we have consumer products. In terms of creative development, that's where we develop concepts. Actually, our development teams are spread across Toronto, New York, and Dublin. We develop concepts, we option partially developed properties, and we also acquire property rights for certain IPs. On the production side, we work on our own proprietary productions, we do co-productions, and we also do service work. We produce 2D animation and 3D animation, live action, scripted and unscripted, from preschool all the way up to tween audiences. On global distribution, we really distribute all rights, linear streaming, all digital platforms. We have a dedicated YouTube team. We manage probably about 80 YouTube channels, and that's a big growing concern of ours. And then our consumer products division, which is spread across Toronto and New York. We have a sort of phased strategic approach, and we have all our global brand management based at the heart of consumer products as well. We produce a wide range of shows, including titles such as Octonauts, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Doc McStuffins, Blue's Clues, The New, Wildcrats, Magic School Bus, Vampirina, Bing, And our latest bridge show, which is called Karma's World, which we're very proud of, which we launched just a month ago on Netflix, hot on the heels of 2 other Netflix launches for Ridley Jones and Ada Twist. We are very sort of honored and pleased to have won some really wonderful awards. We have 2 Oscar nominations, we have 17 Emmys, and a few other awards which we're very proud of. Our creative affairs team is headquartered in New York, and we have additional development staff in our other sites as well. So it's led by our Chief Creative Officer. She's called Angela Santomero, who's the Emmy Award-winning creator of Blue's Clues and You, Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, Super Why, and several other series. And Creative Affairs basically features in-house teams across development, research, and curriculum. So that's broken down. We've got the development teams where really all projects are creator-driven is really the most important thing for us. That is our North Star. And so the company, we like to think, works with a lot of top creative talent. We've worked across animation and live action in all genres. In terms of current series, we really work from the blank page all the way to taking it to screen. We work with writers and researchers, thought leaders, producers, directors, talent networks, and we oversee all aspects of creative, from brainstorms, writing, mixes, music, voiceovers, to the creative integration on storyboards and animation through to the overall brand building. We're really very proud to have our own research division, which is also based in New York. 9 Story's approach really is to put kids first in the creative process. So we have an in-house research team which works with key educational consultants when we're developing every single show and the curriculum for that show. So basically the formative evaluation is conducted in preschools, Head Start programs, daycare centers, and elementary schools across the New York area. And finally, we have our interactive division also housed in New York. So it's a one-stop development shop from the digital products, conception and design through to coding and launch. We work really closely with series producers and directors to develop interactive content around our shows. And there's a real emphasis on emerging technologies, obviously, and digital innovation. In terms of animation, brown bag films across our studios, we have a capacity to produce 21 animated shows at any given time of an average duration of 52 times 11 minutes or 26 half hours. The studios are really amongst the most technically advanced in the world. We have full animation, picture and audio post-production facilities in-house. And Brown Bags has, become a go-to partner for clients like Nickelodeon, Disney, Netflix, and Apple over the years. And where we produce really is very much a function of how to best meet the creative needs of the show. In terms of live action, 9 Story launched a brand new live action division in January 2019, appointing Grania McNamara, who previously was at King Bert and Disney and various other companies, and also produced Mallory Towers, as our VP of Live Action, Development and Production. And so she has got a slate that we've been taking out to market, and we're very excited about this new branch of production that we're working on. And we also recently delivered Blue's Clues and You, which was shot in Toronto for Viacom. So we are, one of the world's largest independent studios for kids and family content. We're well positioned to produce any genre or style of kids programming, from preschool to teen, up to 2D and 3D animation and live action. We have a creator-driven approach to all projects from pitch to delivery, and we're strategically located to take advantage, obviously, of Canadian and Irish tax credits. We also have great direct relationships with top-tier broadcasters and platforms across the globe. In terms of co-productions, we haven't done a huge number of co-productions, which is just, it's not really deliberate in any way, but it's probably because we do have a lot of our own IPs on the slate. So whilst we're really keen to look at potential partnerships, we would probably be more looking at a straightforward 2-partner kind of arrangement where an idea is brought to us with really strong creative direction and a solid piece of development already in place. We also, because we do have a fair bit of kids content in production, be it service work or our own IPs, we're really careful not to partner on an IP which could potentially cannibalize anything else that we're working on. It's not fair to the independent producers or creators that we're working with. And so we tend to have to be quite careful about that. but we're always looking for interesting, amazing ideas, and particularly anything that's not in the space that we're already working in a lot, anything that's in that white space. And of course, we're always searching for unicorns. So that's us in a nutshell.
Fantastic, Alex. Really fascinating stuff. And congratulations on those awards and those Netflix launches as well. Well done. And just before I ask you a couple of questions, just for our audience, I'd like to remind you that if you guys have any questions, you can ask us these questions in the Q&A chat box at the bottom. Please do ask these questions. We're going to be happy to answer them. So as we move on, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions, Alex?
No, not at all, Tammy. Please go ahead.
Fantastic. So what advice would you give for first-time creators or producers in terms of how to approach the market and get their shows seen?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. And it's one that I think probably all of us come up against a lot on this call. And actually, I've had a look at some of the people who are on this webinar, and there are a lot of incredible experts on there as well. So I hope I don't want to preach to the converted. So I'm going to assume that some people haven't already approached the marketplace. So I would say that, once you've got the seed of a good idea, and quite often that creator or producer will have already put a certain amount of work into developing a show, you've kind of got to know when to partner with another company on your baby, because what you don't want to do is remortgage your house and decide that you're going to get 5 scripts written or do an animation test and pay for the whole thing yourself. That's when you need to go to a partner. And the best place to go ideally is to a production, and if possible, a production and distribution company. So it is that one-stop shop. And the reason for that is because most creators will really benefit from working with an in-house experienced development team to just lift it up, take it to the next stage, and make sure that you're making something that is going to be interesting and is going to be appealing globally. And then, that company will probably have the ability to make an animation test through their production services. They might be able to put some financing in themselves or defer some of those fees. And they will also be really, really much better placed than an independent newcomer to go and take it to market and pitch it and get those meetings and really give the production that backup and that gravitas. Because, you can have the best idea in the world. There are certain platforms who are very unlikely to take a meeting with you. They will ask you, they will take a meeting with a distributor or an experienced seasoned or a partner, a production partner they've already worked with. And you might not get any kind of an audience with them otherwise. So if you can go in with that kind of a partnership, and they know that that partner is going to be responsible basically for financing your show, getting it greenlit, that's the best possible start. So that would always be my recommendation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That is really, really helpful guidance there. And I would like to ask you another question. So is there a particular area that you're interested in? For example, during the pandemic, there was a real trend in co-viewing content. Has this shifted at all?
No, I think there is a lot of demand for co-viewing. I think we're making quite a lot of preschool content. And so whilst I would never say we're not open to other pitches and other ideas, because we always are, it's interesting to be looking at bridge programming right now, and also programming in the 6 to 12 demographic, particularly comedy driven. I think it's quite hard to find great comedy driven shows for that age group. And I think most of us are always looking for that kind of content. And it does mean you have great writers and fantastic writing rooms and some really good ideas to get those shows off the ground. So that's always interesting for us. I'm personally very fond of bridge programming, which is strongly comedy driven and has great comedy beats. And we're always looking for unicorns. So, we would never say never to anything, because, it's always interesting to look at what's out on the market, and you can find the best little gems hidden away in places you never expected. So, and family co-viewing content is really, really welcome. It's actually a very difficult genre to nail. It's difficult to find programming that really works as a co-viewing opportunity. But yes, we're always keen on looking at those as well.
So thank you very much, Alex. And we'll be Finally, hearing from Charlotte from Moonbug.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte. Charlotte Loynes. I am Director of Animation Production at Moonbug Entertainment. Moonbug was started 3 years ago, largely as an AVOD company. We start always off with acquiring IP that has an existing presence, and in the last couple of years we've acquired some big ones, and the goal with all that IP and the developing IP is to expand it in all areas, and we've done that with quite a lot of IP, even including into SVOD and to music. The SVOD side of the business is vastly expanding, and I tend to work in that area increasingly, because when we're servicing third parties, we're working with platforms, we're working with broadcasters, the requirements for those productions are greater than when we're just looking after our own channels. The production challenges are very, very different between AVOD and SVOD, and I thought today I would just talk to you a little bit about what I do, and when I'm largely sourcing talent and studios. So at the moment, Moonbug is the largest digital kids content provider worldwide. We have a whole bunch of wonderful IP. Some of it you'll have heard of, I hope: Go Buster, Arpo, T-Rex Ranch, Morphle, Super Strikers, Gecko's Garage, Key, Sharksons, and Cocomelon, Blippi. And with that IP, we're expanding it out, as I said, and we are always developing our own shows. So my job is to source the talent that we work with. And so that means I'm constantly talking to animation partners. I also talk to designers and other contributors across all production. We also don't produce in-house. Largely, almost entirely, our work is produced by studios for us, working with us, and that we're making about 75 hours a year, and then that's also being translated into 27 languages and also on about 100 platforms worldwide. So that's a lot of content, and that means that I've got an enormous appetite for animation studios. Currently working with 16 across the world, and one of the things I look at when I'm talking to studios is obviously their track record in the type of work that we need for that show. I will always look at their capacity, of course, what they're good at, if they've worked in the preschool space, because we work in the preschool space almost exclusively, not entirely, but mostly. What software they use. Quite often, we have lots of different studios working on one piece of IP. And so that sometimes means that we've got to make sure that the assets, the models are the same, or they are usable, or they are adaptable, but certainly that the end product looks the same. And with Cocomelon being the second biggest YouTube channel, we have an enormous appetite for that. And so I'm constantly looking at studios, as I said, that have the capacity to work in that preschool space, but also to understand the creative for preschool. There are different requirements creatively when working for that audience, and some of that's very subtle, but I do specifically look for it. So we work with studios that either just do animation, and we might do the pre-production, like Alex was saying, the same thing. We work with studios that do the full production. Sometimes we even work with studios that go into audio, although we were founded with a bunch of people who are very talented at music, and so quite often we can cover that off. When I'm talking to studios, the one thing I'm really clear about, and I've talked to studios all the time where there's loads of productions going on, so there have been a lot of learnings. I'm really, really clear about the brief, and I actually produced a document which has got a really, really clear brief, which includes details like how many shots. This is precise detail, but I will go into this level of detail just to make sure that the studios are properly resourced. For instance, it might be, so how many shots can a lighter in your studio do? How many are you allowing for on this show? Every single piece of my brief has come from my particular learning on a particular show. And with that example, a show got into a little bit of difficulty because it wasn't properly resourced in lighting. My background is production, and so I'm able to look at somebody's bid, look at somebody's planning and say, not sure you've allowed enough there, or X, Y, Z. The other things we look at is, of course, what they've got on at that time, their seats, what software they use, and then quite often when you're working with broadcasters and platforms, of course, they will want approval on the studio, the partner. We also look at the talent, and that will, of course, depend on what we want the studio to do. We love to have a great collaborative working relationship with studios. I mean, we're not just churning out stuff, we're making shows that we love and that we know and we've researched and we've developed very, very carefully for our audience. And so we are very careful about who we work with in terms of, do they care? Do they get it? And with that in mind, if it's a show that requires pre-production, then we will look at the pre-production talent. And we do find that the pre-production talent varies from territory to territory. I get into a lot of detail with the studios on the resources, as I mentioned, and the resources, to make sure, we have to make sure that the resources are appropriate for the production. And that doesn't mean making sure that I've got the cheapest budget. What it means is making sure that they are properly resourced in terms of money, time, crew, cash flow, and that everybody understands what the asks are for the show. And that's not just creative, although the creative obviously plays into a large part of it. It's also the approvals. So Moonbug, of course, has all sorts of internal stakeholders, and we may, of course, also have external approvals. And so working that into what we ask the studio to do is very, very important. We don't mind where we work. There is, of course, an awful lot of animation talent in Asia, India, as we all know, obviously, and we are working a lot with Canadian studios. Obviously, the pre-production as well as the animation talent in Canada is immense, and so that's a go-to. Having said that, we do work with some smaller studios, and it's a personal love of mine to take a smaller studio and help them get to the level that we need them. That doesn't mean that we can necessarily support them if they're not at the right level, but it can get them to work faster quite often, and I can use their strengths and support them in other areas by using studios to perhaps do the pre-production, or we do it in-house, as well as, and then using a studio for the actual animation. Post-production, we tend to handle either with a studio or in-house, obviously working with post-production companies. Music, I've said, we are quite strong on audio, so that's quite easy. We also develop our own shows, and largely those shows are spin-offs of the IP that we've acquired. There's an awful lot of that going on, and for that, we largely, almost exclusively, work in-house with a huge team of creative executives and some in-house designers, but largely we go outside for designers. And that's one of the things that I'm also passionate about, finding designers, individual designers. And so whilst we work with the big studios on a big scale and smaller studios, we also work with individuals for design and development. And that's ongoing all the time. And of course, we also work with directors, creative execs, as I said, showrunners, composers, scriptwriters. But I will say that it's very important to us to have brilliant relationships with the studios we work with, and for me to be able to troubleshoot and help if things get sticky. And they largely don't get sticky, I find, if everyone's understood the brief. So a little bit more about Moonbug. We've set up in 2018, as I said. We've got studios in London and Los Angeles. Our head of creative, Richard Hickey, has been with the company from the very start, and he understands all our content very well and how to expand all that content into the different areas. And of course, for a linear broadcaster or an SVOD, it's a very different need to AVOD, as I said earlier, and also what different requirements for L&M and music. So he's over all of that, and he leads a huge team of creatives. Now, largely the creative team is in LA, and we are always recruiting, but we also have a big creative department in London. We have had some recent news that's a requirement, and that's very exciting. And so Moonbug will just be going from strength to strength. That's all from me, Temi. Have you got any questions?
I do have a couple of questions. Thank you, Charlotte. Sounds like you're working on a lot of compelling things there. So could I ask you a question? So you mentioned that you've worked with an enormous amount of content yourselves, and I guess there isn't huge opportunities for individual creators. However, do you co-produce with other studios, and are there any key territories that interest you?
We haven't to date done a traditional co-production. We routinely subcontract, but that relationship, as I said, is very important. And it's not to say we wouldn't do it in the future. We tend to adapt pretty quickly to everything that's changing at Moonbug all the time. And so I wouldn't rule that out. Individuals, yes, we certainly work with individuals a lot. And as I said earlier, I'm particularly interested in sourcing artists, designers, particularly character designers, and background artists, but mainly character designers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. That was all really, really interesting. Now, if we could bring back all the speakers, we have a few minutes left to go through some of your questions. Hi, everybody. Brilliant.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Right then, so I have a question from the audience. So I'd like to ask from Carolina, what does the acquisition of Moonbug by Kevin Mayer and Tom Staggs Media venture mean for the company?
Okay, the quick answer to this is I don't know. There's nothing official, but I think I can confidently say we'll be doing a lot of hiring.
Brilliant. Okay.
So certainly expansion.
Oh, Alex, we had a question earlier actually from Mo. If you wouldn't mind answering. Mo says, what is the main difference between a co-production and a partnership?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I probably confused things a little bit. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, basically. It's just that, you know, when you're doing a co-production with somebody, you're marrying them. It's a marriage. And so, you know, we see it as a partnership. So, because the term co-production can feel very technical, but really you need to feel really good about that company. You need to feel really good about working with them, because you're in it for, you know, it's going to be 3 to 5 or 10 years. And as John Coates, who was the creator of The Snowman, used to say, as he propped up a bar long time ago with me, he said, only ever work with people you like. So I would say that's a pretty key one.
Fantastic answer there. So Ed and Lynn, a question for you guys. Do you have any in-house licensing arms? If not, is this an ambition of yours? So who would like to answer that first out of you guys?
I can go first. To date, we don't have an in-house licensing arm. It's certainly an ambition of ours. I would say, you know, we're sort of somewhat new to sort of creating our own IP and managing our own IP. And I think it's not until that point when you start, when your business sort of requires an in-house licensing arm. Now, other people might have a different argument. I've been doing this for a fairly long time. I've been in the business for about 25 years plus. And I've always felt that to really lean into in-house licensing, you need to have full ownership of your own IP. And so that's sort of a new evolution for our business. So I would say down the line, we will have that, but not today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. Lynn?
Yeah, I would completely agree with Ed. I mean, we are at the very beginning of our journey into looking after and cultivating our own IP. And if the property is appropriate to take that tack, then absolutely that's something that would come with time. But you really do need to focus on the property itself first before adding any of that infrastructure. But as that grows, for sure, that would be a brilliant add-on down the road for us.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Now back to you, Ed. Another question for you. Right. What makes the perfect co-producer?
Wow. Well, I think a lot of what Alex says holds true, right? It is a partnership that you're investing in for sometimes longer than people's marriages. So I would say, you really have to work with people that understand what your ultimate goal is. And you have to work with people that you like. But going back to sort of working with someone to understand what the ultimate goal is, I think you need to set out together when you're about to go on this journey, understanding what it is that you guys are trying to do and making sure that you're on the same page from the very beginning. I think what a lot of times happens in this business that people sort of get excited about partnering with one another, but people don't think through what that actually means. And I think if you sit down together and really hash out what it is that you guys are trying to achieve, where are the sticky points, how do you get through those? And if you do those up front, then that will ease the pain down the road. We've had some really incredible partnerships that have lasted 15 years, and we've had some other partnerships that have been shorter lived because I think we didn't do those things that I talked about. And I think my learnings over the years really to be honest with people, to make sure that you're upfront with what your expectations are and go from there.
Brilliant. Some really insightful answers there from everyone. I have another question that is for all of you, from Liz. She'd love to know how each of the speakers feel about approaches from writers, either with original projects or looking for work on existing properties, films and/or shows. Who would like to go first? Charlotte, go on.
I'm always looking for people. I'm not looking for shows. We are not looking for shows really that don't have existing success at the moment. That's not to say that won't change at all. That isn't my area. My area is sourcing talent for our productions. And as I mentioned, there's loads and loads and loads of them. And so I'm always looking for talent. That means designers, writers, voiceover artists, composers, certainly production staff. I think there's a little bit of a struggle trying to find producers in the UK at the moment. But yes, I'm always looking.
Brilliant. Anybody else?
I mean, I'm happy to go. Listen, I think we're always looking for talent always. And you get talent from all different places. Writers are a key component to what it is that we do. So we are always hiring writers to work on projects. So we welcome, working with new people and also new ideas coming from writers. Again, I would say if it's a new project, we would ask that they think through what it is that they're trying to achieve and what that IP is before they bring it to us, that it's a little bit more baked than just sort of a one-liner. But ultimately, yes, we have great interest in finding ideas from all different sources.
Yeah, I would echo that. There's nothing like a great idea. A great idea is a great idea, no matter where it comes from. And great writers are always welcome. And it's very interesting to also look at and support and bring up new writers. We're really keen on doing that as well. So we would welcome approaches from writers. We want to continue sort of widening the pool of writers always. So yeah.
Fantastic. Lynn, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think everyone's just covered it so brilliantly. There's not really a lot more I can throw in there. But yeah, just to say that, you know, fresh ideas come from every different direction, at least where you would expect oftentimes. So you know, it's just finding that relationship and growing that relationship with really good ideas, great storytellers, and people that are passionate about why that story needs to be told to the audience, be it family or children or both. So yeah.
Well, thank you all for that. And another question for you all from Adrian. What are the 3 key markets that speakers attend to find new projects and partners?
I can kick that off. So Cartoon Forum is a fantastic market. I'd say that would be one of my top choices because, you know, all you do is go and see pitches, and that's all you do. And I think people are you go to that market with that in mind. And so you really, really get to see a wide array of new projects that have been brought out of various different countries across UK and Europe. And so that's a really good one. I think actually, and I'm not just saying this to butter up Greg, but I think that CMC, the Children's Media Conference, is a really, really fantastic conference in order to find new projects and partners, but also the sessions are really very, very, very good, I would say, and really well moderated and chosen and selected. Greg, I'll pay you later. And you can pay me later, rather. And then I think that MIPCOM is a very good one. It's an important one for buyers because the screening facility that they have at MIPCOM in normal non-COVID times is such that you can put a full episode or a trailer in front of all the key buyers and commissioners around the world. And what I see is that they really do sit down and tend to watch most of what's there that they don't recognize, especially. So I think that that's a fantastic place to take projects and to make sure your project is seen by the right people.
I would also add in that Annecy is also another good place to go, especially from a creator's perspective and from a talent perspective. There seem to be a lot more talent, animators, creators, directors that attend a festival versus Cartoon Forum, which is a little bit more creator, but studio and buyer led. And then of course, a place like MIPCOM, which is very much on the business and selling side of things. Not that any of those are bad, Alex. I'm just adding one more to the list because I agree with you on all the places that you mentioned already.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ed. And we're running slightly short on time now. So we have one more question, which is for all of you. So what is the biggest tip that you would have given your younger self starting out in the industry? And if you could make this short and snappy.
Patience.
Patience. Brilliant.
I'd say have an A, B, and a C plan at all times.
A, B, and C plan. Right then, thank you very much, everybody. So moving on from the questions now, thank you so much for asking in the audience. So remember, some of us will be dropping into Wonder in a minute or so. I know Lynn and Charlotte are able to be there, so you can chat to them and each other in the networking space there. And this is the last session of the day, but there are of course also 4 videos which add to your ABC experience. They're available for you to view whenever you want, and this session and all the other live sessions from today will be posted in full tomorrow on the same playlist on YouTube, which you all have the private link. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and thanks to our brilliant panelists for this session and the other sessions across the day, and of course to our sponsor of this session, Open Beijing. And thanks to CMC team for putting all of this together, especially the volunteer producers who made all of these sessions and videos happen. So once again, CMC has been by you as well as for you. And that's it for ABC by CMC. See you in Wonder.